Okay, folks, buckle up. Now, if you saw part one, you'll know CERN's machine loves raising questions it refuses to answer. Well, this time the question is a whole lot darker. And by the end, you're going to look at a board game, a fast food logo, and that feeling that time is speeding up in a whole different way. Get ready for a wild ride. Some stories you investigate. Others refuse to let you sleep. This is the second kind. In the weeks since posting part one, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd only told you half of it, that there was a darker version of the story sitting just underneath, waiting. What I found changes everything about how I see that machine buried under the Swiss-French countryside. Last time, I asked you a question. Did CERN change reality by accident? Tonight, I want to ask you a worse one. What if it wasn't an accident at all? What if, buried inside the biggest machine humanity has ever built, something is being sent? Now, not a person, not a spacecraft, but a message, a single whisper of information aimed backwards through time at us. And here's the part that keeps me up at night. If that message already arrived, how would you ever know it was there? So, a message through time. Now that's quite a lot to take in. But that's genuinely where the physics points, and I couldn't let it go. In part one, we chased the idea that reality glitched on its own. And this time, we're chasing something colder, intent. Somebody or something choosing to send it. I'm not asking you to believe it yet. I'm just asking you to keep that idea in your head for the next 20 minutes. The message. The one thing everyone gets wrong about time travel. Here is where nearly every time travel story trips over its own feet. We picture a body, a person in a chair, white knuckles, vanishing in a flash of light and reappearing in ancient Rome. And physics, quite politely, tells us to forget it. A human being is fragile, heavy, and very complicated. The energy you would need to push a body through a closed time-like curve, a loop in space-time that bends back on itself, is so absurd it borders on comedy. So we laugh, and we close the book. Time travel? Impossible. Case closed. But watch what happens when you stop thinking about the traveller and start thinking about the cargo. Because information is not a person. It has no bones to shatter, no cells to age, no beating heart to stop. Information has no mass at all. It's the lightest thing in the universe, a single bit, a yes or a no, a 1 or a 0. And the rules that make sending a human being laughable do not necessarily apply to sending a single bit of truth. That's the shift I want you to make with me tonight. We're not asking, can a person travel through time? We already know the answer to that. We're asking something far more unsettling. Can a message travel through time? And if the answer is yes, even theoretically, then the whole game changes. Because you don't build the most powerful machine in human history, 27 kilometers of superconducting magnets, to send nothing. You build it to find something, to catch something, maybe to send something. So let me plant the real question right here. What actually happened inside that machine that made serious physicists write papers about sending information backwards in time? What did they see? Oh, I love this bit because it's so simple once it clicks. We've been so busy laughing at the idea of the DeLorean that we never stop to ask the smaller, sneakier question. Forget the guy, what about the note in his pocket? And honestly, that's such a human blind spot, right? We always picture ourselves as the main character, the hero who travels, never the humble little bit of data that actually could. There's something almost funny about that. The universe might allow time travel, just not for us. How rude. Anyway, hold that thought. What did they see? What is a Higgs singlet? The particle physics can't rule out. Now, to understand what they're hunting, you have to meet the strangest guest at the party, the Higgs singlet. Now, you've probably heard of the Higgs boson, found in 2012, a particle that gives other particles their mass, the so-called God particle, splashed across every newspaper on Earth. Well, that one is famous. But the Higgs singlet is its shy, secretive cousin, and it's never been confirmed to exist at all. Now, here's what makes it special. In physics, most particles are chatty. They interact, they bump, they obey the ordinary rules of the standard model, the rulebook of everything we know. But a singlet is theorized to be a loner, a scalar particle that barely talks to the ordinary world we live in. It sits in theory at a kind of doorway, a portal. That's what physicists actually call it, between our familiar universe and what they term a hidden sector, a dark, unseen layer of reality running quietly alongside our own. Why does that matter for a message? Well, because a doorway is exactly what you would need if you want to send information somewhere the ordinary laws forbid. You don't use an ordinary particle. You use the one thing that ignores the normal rules. The one particle that touches the hidden layer where the usual limits of space and possibly time start to bend. That's why the singlet is so tantalizing, so frustrating. It's the perfect messenger, light, elusive, connected to hidden physics. And it's the one thing our machines have never been able to confirm or deny. Physics can't rule it out, and physics can't find it yet. Which raises an obvious itching question. If we've been looking this hard for this long, why is it still hiding? Is it simply too rare to catch? Or is it waiting for a bigger net? Right. Quick confession. The first time I read the phrase portal to a hidden sector, I assumed I was reading science fiction. I wasn't. That's the actual language serious physicists use. A hidden sector, a whole shadow layer of reality we can't see. And I find that genuinely wonderful and slightly terrifying in equal measure. Because if there is a door, the first thing any curious species does is knock on it, loudly, with a 27-kilometer knuckle. We're not a subtle species, are we? We found a mysterious door and immediately built the biggest fist imaginable. You don't send a man, you send a bit. So, let's actually do it, theoretically. How do you send a message to yesterday? This is where two rival ideas walk into the room, and they genuinely disagree with each other. They both come from real physics, and both are unnerving. The first belongs to physicist David Deutsch. His model of a time-looped bit of information is beautifully strange. Picture a single qubit, a piece of quantum data, sent around a closed timelike curve, back to its own past. Now, Deutsch's rule is simple but ruthless. The bit is only allowed to exist if it's perfectly consistent with itself. It must loop, meet its own history, and agree with it completely. No contradictions permitted. The universe in this picture is a stern editor. It deletes any message that would argue with its own past. Now, the second idea is even stranger, the post-selected model, explored by physicist Seth Lloyd and colleagues. Now here, the universe does not edit after the fact, it filters before. Only the timelines where the message is consistent are ever allowed to happen in the first place. Everything else quietly never occurs. You don't fix a paradox, you simply live in the one reality where the paradox never arose. Now sit with that for a second. In both models, a message can travel backwards, but only a very particular kind of message, one that was always in some sense meant to be there. And that's the thread that pulls this whole story tight. Because if you could only ever send a message that the universe already permits, then a working channel would not feel like magic. It would feel like fate, like something you can't fight. Which leads us straight into the oldest objection of them all, the one your gut is already shouting at the screen. What about the paradox? What about going back and stopping the whole thing from ever happening? Well, hold that thought, because the loophole is more chilling than the problem. Now, I'm not going to casually pretend I understand quantum post-selection over my morning coffee. I don't. Nobody fully does. But the flavour of it is what gets me. Two brilliant people looked at the same impossible thing, and one said the universe edits the message, and the other said the universe pre-approves the message. But either way, the universe is doing your homework and marking it. And there's something quietly hilarious about physicists inventing an all-powerful cosmic editor just to avoid admitting that time travel might make a mess. Tidy universe, suspiciously tidy. The grandfather paradox has a loophole. You already know the grandfather paradox. Go back in time, prevent your grandparents from meeting, and you erase yourself, which means you were never there to erase yourself, and reality chokes on the contradiction. It's the reason most people wave time travel away entirely. Too messy, too broken. But there is a principle that quietly dissolves the whole problem, and it's real physics, not fiction. It's called the Novikov self-consistency principle, named for physicist Igor Novikov. And Novikov's idea is almost unnervingly calm. It says the universe simply does not allow contradictions, full stop. If time travel is possible, then the only events that can happen are the ones that were always going to happen. You can't kill a grandfather because you didn't, you never did. Any action you take in the past was already part of history. The loop was always closed, you were always there. Now, apply that to a message. If someone sends information backwards through the singlet channel, Novikov's principle says that message can only tell you things that were always going to be true anyway. You can't warn yourself off a path you were never going to take. You can't rewrite a decision that history has already recorded. The message is real, but it's handcuffed to a future that already happened. And here's the chilling part I promised you. A working channel to the past would not set you free. It would prove you were never free to begin with. Every warning it sends, you were always going to receive. Every action you take because of it, you are always going to take. The message does not give you a choice. It reveals that the choice was already made. So, why is this event so strange? Because if this is true, a message from tomorrow is not a gift, it's a cage. And you have to ask, who would ever want to build a cage like that on purpose? This is the section that genuinely rattled me when I was writing it. As a kid, I always assumed time travel would be freedom. Go back, fix a mistake, save the day. And Novikov turns that completely inside out. In his universe, you can't fix anything because it's already fixed, including you. And I keep coming back to that word, handcuffed. A message you can't disobey is not really information, is it? It's an instruction from a future that already won. I made myself a strong cup of tea after writing that. I needed it, you might too. Who would want a message from tomorrow? Well, let's step out of the equations for a moment and into human nature. Because the physics is only half the story. The other half is motive. Ask yourself honestly, if a channel to the past existed, even a narrow one, even one that could only send a few consistent bits of information, who on earth would want it most? Well, think about what a single confirmed message from tomorrow would actually be worth. Not a person, not a machine, just knowledge. Knowledge of what is coming before anyone else on the planet has the faintest idea. Now, foreknowledge is the oldest form of power there is. Every empire, every fortune, every advantage in human history came down to knowing something first. And here is the quiet, uncomfortable logic. A discovery like that would never be announced. Think about it. The moment you reveal you can receive information from the future, its value collapses, because now everyone knows. The only way to keep that power is to keep it secret, which means if such a channel were ever opened, the most rational thing its owners could possibly do is tell absolutely no one. I want to be careful here because I'm not accusing any person or institution of anything. I've got no evidence of a hidden plot, and I wouldn't pretend that I do. This is speculation, theory, a thought experiment about incentives. But the incentive itself is undeniable. A working message to the past would be the single most valuable secret in human history. And valuable secrets don't tend to hold press conferences. So, we're left with a strange circular suspicion. If the technology were possible, we would expect it to be hidden. And if it were hidden, its absence from the headlines would prove nothing at all. Which brings us to the evidence hiding in plain sight. The fingerprints, the residue. The little things that are not quite the way you remember them. I want to plant a flag here because this is important. I'm not telling you a shadowy cabal is reading tomorrow's newspaper. I genuinely don't believe I've got any proof of that. What I am saying is softer, and honestly, I think far more interesting. The motive is real even if the plot is not. Humans always paid anything for a peek at what's coming. So the thought experiment stands on its own. If it were possible, would they tell us? Would you? Yeah, exactly. Neither would I. The residue. Why millions remember a reality that never existed. Well, now we arrive at the part of the story that lives in your own memory, and I mean that literally. You remember the Monopoly man, little top-hatted mascot, cane in hand, moustache, and that shiny monocle over his eye. You can picture it right now. Except there's a problem. He never had a monocle. Not once. Go and look. It's not there, and it never was. And yet, millions of people, maybe you included, remember it with total clarity. Or the fast food chain, you know the one, the chicken place. How do you spell it? And most people confidently think of Chick-fil-A spelled one way, and then look up and find the name is spelled differently than they remember. A tiny detail, a logo, a spelling. The kind of thing nobody would ever bother to fake. In part 1, I called these Mandela Effects, and I framed them as reality glitching on its own. Now tonight, I want to offer you a darker reframe. What if they are not glitches? What if they are read receipts? Follow the thread. If a message is sent backwards, and Novikov's principle forces the timeline to stay consistent, then reality has to quietly correct itself around every edit. And where would those corrections show up? Not in the big, long-bearing facts of history. Those are anchored, remembered by billions. They would show up in the low-stakes debris. A mascot's monocle, the spelling of a logo. Trivial details, cheap to overwrite, that no one would think to defend. And our memories, our stubborn, disagreeing memories, might be the only surviving copy of the version from before the edit. So, what does that mean for us? It means that unsettling feeling so many of you described in the comments, that time feels faster, that nothing has felt quite right for years, might not be in your head? What if you're not misremembering the past? What if you're noticing the corrections? So I read your comments on part 1, all of them, and the thing that stopped me was not the monocle or the spelling. It was how many of you said quietly that things just feel differently lately, that time seems to be speeding up. Now, I'm not going to stand here and tell you that it's definitely temporal editing, because I've got no proof of that. But I will say this, I felt seen reading those comments because I feel it too. And maybe we're all just tired, or maybe we're remembering the draft. Long Shutdown 3 and the FCC, why they're really upgrading the machine. Now here's the fact that turns this from a bedtime creepypasta into something you can check for yourself. Right now, as you watch this, the Large Hadron Collider is switched off. It's what CERN calls Long Shutdown 3, a multi-year pause, the machine cold and silent, swarmed by engineers. And the official reason is an upgrade, and that part's completely true and completely public. They're transforming it into the High-Luminosity LHC. Luminosity in physics basically means how many collisions you can pack into the machine, and the upgrade is enormous, aiming to increase the collision data by roughly a factor of 10. Now, sit with that number through the lens of everything we've just discussed. If your goal were to find or produce an impossibly rare particle, a shy little singlet that barely interacts with anything and hides at the edge of detection, what would you need? You would need more collisions, far more. You would need to roll the dice, not thousands of times, but millions upon millions more. You would need, in other words, exactly this upgrade. The boring maintenance story and the extraordinary story fit the same evidence perfectly. That's what makes it hard to dismiss. And they're not stopping there. Waiting in the wings is the LHC's big brother, the Future Circular Collider, the FCC. A proposed machine so large its ring would dwarf the current one, engineered to reach around 3 times the energy. If the current collider is the net that keeps just missing the singlet, the FCC is the net built specifically to catch it. The machine designed to finish the search, which leaves one final door to open. If they're building a machine powerful enough to catch a message from the future, what happens the day they succeed? Or, and hold on to something here, what if the reason they know exactly where to look is that the answer already came back to tell them? And this is the part I always want people to fact check because I want you to be skeptical. Now, Long Shutdown 3 is real. The High Luminosity upgrade is also real. And so is the FCC proposal, all real. And none of that is fringe. It's on CERN's own website. What is fringe is the meaning I'm hanging on it, and I own that one completely. But I love that the mundane explanation and the wild one predict the exact same machine. More collisions, bigger net. Now, whether you're hunting ordinary physics or something far stranger, you build precisely what they're building. And funny how that works, or not funny, I can't decide. If the message already arrived. Now, let me take you back to the question I hid in the very first minute. If a message from the future already arrived, how would you ever know it was there? I think maybe we've been staring at the answer this whole time. Consider the strangest loop of all, the bootstrap paradox. It works like this. Imagine the instructions for building the Singlet channel are sent back in time to the scientists who then build the channel. So the channel is used to send back the very blueprint that creates the channel. Where did the knowledge come from? Nowhere. It has no origin. It simply exists in the loop, feeding itself. An answer with no question, cause with no beginning. Now look at where we actually are. Physicists know with remarkable precision what to hunt for. The properties of a particle they've never seen. A doorway to a sector no one has ever touched. And they're pouring billions and decades into building the exact machine needed to find it. We assume that knowledge came from human theory, from chalk on a blackboard. But what if some sliver of it came back to us? What if the singlet is not just the messenger, but the message? What if the reason we are so sure it's out there is that somewhere ahead of us in time, we already found it, and we made very sure our past selves would look? The Monopoly monocle, the spelling that shifted, the feeling that time is running faster than it should, and the most powerful machine ever built, quietly upgrading in the dark, hunting a particle that might carry a whisper from tomorrow. I don't know if the message has arrived, but I know we built the mailbox, and I know we're making it bigger. So the only question I'll leave you with is the one that I can't answer. If tomorrow is already talking to us, are we listening, or are we just now finally learning to read? And that's where I'll leave it, because that's where the honest edge of what we know actually is. I don't have a big reveal for you, no leaked document, no smoking gun. Just a machine, a particle, and a very strange loop that refuses to sit still in my head. Right, if this rattled you the way it rattled me, tell me in the comments which Mandela Effect you would swear your life was real. I read every single one, I really do. Oh, and try not to think too much about the mailbox. See you in part 3, maybe. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this one. I've just started a second channel, Chronicles of the Drift, so please stop by and check it out. Link in the description below. If you'd like to support the channel further, I've got Patreon and YouTube memberships, again links in the description below. And don't forget to check out the Mysteria Archive podcast, available on the YouTube Music app. As always, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. It really helps out the channel and I'd really appreciate it. All right, my friends, be safe, and until next time, stay curious.